Many of you probably know that I have called for Washington National Cathedral to remove two windows on the south side of the nave that depict the lives of the Confederate generals Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee. Both of these windows display the Confederate battle flag. These windows, along with their inscriptions, seek to reframe the Civil War and to present these two generals as saintly, exemplary Christians. Let me say a word about each issue. First, the battle flag. The Confederate battle flag is a common image in American culture, but in the wake of the shootings in Charleston the week before last, we have all become aware of how deeply offensive this image is, especially to African Americans. Like it or not, the Confederate battle flag has become the symbol of white supremacy in America. There are many white Southerners who will say, sincerely, that they intend no disrespect when displaying it, and I believe them. But as a preacher, I know a lot about the difference between intent and impact. I may not intend you to hear something when I say it, but if you do hear it, I am still responsible for what you hear. And so it is with the flag. As benign as the intentions of some may be in displaying the Confederate battle flag, the fact that so many find it so offensive should be enough of a reason to fold it up and put it away. There simply is no excuse for the nation's most visible church to display a symbol of racism, slavery, and oppression. None. I believe all representations of this flag should go from our public spaces, and in saying that, I do not intend or want to whitewash history, as some have claimed. But I don't want to celebrate a cause whose primary reason for being was the preservation and extension of slavery in America. As President Obama said on Friday at the funeral for Clementa Pinckney, removing the flag from the state's capital would not be an act of political correctness, he said. He went on, it would not be an insult to the valor of Confederate soldiers. He concluded, it would simply be acknowledgement that the cause for which they fought, the cause of slavery, was wrong. Second, the windows themselves. Some have suggested that we merely excise the flag images from the windows and leave the rest of them intact. But if you go and look at them after the service, and I encourage you to do so, they're on the south side of the nave here, just this side of President Wilson's tomb. If you go and look at them after the service, you will see that the flags are only part of the problem. The Lee-Jackson Bay was installed in 1953 after a long campaign by the United Daughters of the Confederacy, both to fund those windows and to get us to accept and approve them. The United Daughters of the Confederacy is a group mainly concerned with fostering respect for Southern heritage. But in proposing these windows, they went beyond heritage and created a memorial that puts a decidedly saintly spin on two leaders of the Confederate Army. The inscriptions beneath those windows portray Lee and Jackson as exemplary Christian gentlemen. The windows and their inscriptions contain no reference to the sin of slavery, which both men fought and one of them died to uphold. Now, some have accused me of wanting to whitewash history. I don't seek to do that. I seek to celebrate history in all of its fullness and all of its complexity. In calling for the windows to be removed, I am asking not to rewrite the past, but to tell the story of the past honestly, in a way that honors not just one side, but everyone involved in a painful time whose effects are with us yet. The great Southern American novelist William Faulkner once said, "The past is never dead. It's not even past." America's cathedral should represent America in all of its fullness, and this cathedral should tell our story without trying to make saints of men who served an unjust cause. We can live with some contradictions until we can't. I'm not unaware that the dean who installed these windows, Dean Francis Sayre, was one of the great activist civil rights clergy of the 1950s and 1960s. Apparently, Dean Sayre saw no contradiction between supporting the Lee-Jackson windows in 1953 and Brown versus Board of Education 1 year later. He could live in that tension, but I cannot. And I believe that this cathedral must change those windows because it cannot. It is time for those windows to go and to live elsewhere in our buildings as part of a historical display. It is time for us to commission new windows for the nave, windows that will tell the full, yet painful, yet hopeful story of race and justice in America. And that brings me back to today's gospel. Two entwined stories about faithful people taking risks. Like Mark's gospel, America itself tells two interlocking tales. One tale of equality and liberty and freedom, another tale of oppression and violence, slavery and segregation. We will never live into the fullness of our destiny as a people until we live into the fullness of the interconnectedness of these two stories. In 1865, we ended a war over slavery, and we began, as blacks and whites, to live together as full and equal citizens of our shared land. 150 years later, we still have not completed the work begun in that war's end. Washington National Cathedral is called, as our nation's most visible church, to lead the faith community, to lead our nation in healing America by facing into racism, its history, and its encampment in our own hearts. We cannot do that if our building only tells one side of the story. We cannot do that while the Confederate battle flag shines in our windows. All our artworks, like our scriptures and those who preach from them, must always strive to tell the truth. And sadly, our understanding of truth emerges only over time. Jairus dared to risk by seeking out an itinerant preacher for help. The woman dared to risk by touching a holy man when she was sick. Jesus dared to risk by promising that he could bring a dead girl back to life. Everyone laughed, and then they were overcome with amazement. We can live with some contradictions until we can't. So here is the question this gospel poses for us today. And we could not find a clearer, sharper moral problem to confront us if we tried. In the light of the risks taken by Jesus and these others, do you and I have the courage to do something risky as well? Can Washington National Cathedral, this great, this glorious temple of our nation's religious establishment, can this cathedral dare to risk on behalf of our best shared vision of America? Do we have the courage to revisit our assumptions and admit when they are inadequate or false? Can we risk admitting that we can no longer live with the contradiction between justice and oppression, that we can no longer celebrate both slavery and freedom in the same space? The past is never dead. It's not even past. This cathedral will continue to honor all sides of the American story. What this cathedral can no longer do is to pretend that slavery was a value worth fighting for. Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee were no doubt men of courage and valor. They loved their homeland and they fought for it with courage. But in choosing to serve a nation founded on slavery, they were wrong. And they fought under a flag that many across America equate today with racism, bigotry, and hatred. It is time for our cathedral to replace their memorial with one that does justice to all the sacrifices of all who were involved in that terrible and bloody conflict. It is time for this cathedral, like the Jesus we follow, to dare and to risk. People may laugh, but if we are faithful and persistent, they will be overcome with amazement at the loving and forgiving and liberating grace of the God that we struggle by fits and starts to follow. Amen.